Hello, and welcome to this video. Okay, so I know what you're thinking. I know what you're thinking. This is quite the bold statement. You know how to beat the Prairie King without dying? Well, let me explain, okay? I will preface this by saying that with so many other things in life, everything gets better with practice and experience, right? So, let's just get into it, okay? First of all, I would like to talk a little bit about my story with Prairie King. But also, just the biggest shout out to Concerned Ape for even making low-key an entire new game within a game. That's just incredible and beyond words, so that's out of the way. But when I first attempted to play it, I spent way too much time on it, actually totally forgetting that I was even playing Stardew Valley because I was playing Prairie King. You know, it just whatever, it was a whole game to itself. And I think the reason why I put so much love and interest into this part of the game is because it's reminding me so much of The Binding of Isaac. I love The Binding of Isaac. Little side note, so I definitely blame that for my love of it. So by, while it is more simple than The Binding of Isaac will probably perhaps ever be, it still has that great feel to it. Okay, so what does the game even entail? Well, I'm not gonna spend way too much time on this, but I will just say you're a little Prairie King trying to get the girl. But first, you have to beat some bad guys. Simple, right? Wrong. Let's start off by speaking about one of the most vital parts of this game, being the power-ups. Now, I have learned that the power-ups don't have any official names, but the fandom has given them some names, so I will be going off of that. So let's take it from the top. Very simple, straight to the point. Coffee. Coffee increases movement speed that lasts about 5 seconds. I would say it's a decent power-up, but I would not risk my life trying to get too close to it unless absolutely necessary, which it's not. So coffee is good, but don't sweat it. Don't sweat it. If you can't grab it, it's fine. Next up is heavy machine gun. This significantly increases fire rate for about 12 seconds. This is one of the power-ups that are great for safekeeping, but also for saving your ass if enemies come too close. But yeah, and still, I wouldn't get into a mess of enemies to get to it, because it can also be a little bit hard to control, like you just have this long stream of things. But it's definitely okay. Next up, we got Screen Nuke. This instantly destroys all enemies on screen. When enemies are killed like this, they will not drop items. Now, this is a good item, especially if you are in a pickle. This is one that I would definitely keep in a moment of distress, basically, that you could need it. But do remember its con. It is definitely okay to skip it every once in a while, because you're gonna want those coins and, of course, the other power-ups that are maybe a little bit more useful than the Screen Nuke is. Then we have the shotgun. This causes 3 bullets to be fired at once in a cone at a slightly lower rate. It also lasts about 12 seconds. I personally really like this one. It's simple, and I would definitely recommend that you keep it in a stressful situation. If there are lots of enemies, it's really good to just because especially in the earlier stages, they come out in a bunch of almost blobs. So it's really good for that, because you can just get a lot of enemies at the same time. Now's the smoke bomb. This teleports the player to a random spot on screen and causes enemies to stand still with question marks above their heads, because they're stupid. Anyway, enemies will continue to spawn, building up inside of the spawn zones. This lasts about 4 seconds. Now, this one I love for pretty much only one reason. If you're lucky, if you have one when you get to one of the boss stages, just try to save it, basically. Because this bug can happen. Where you're just right next to that little cowboy, but he doesn't even freaking realize. He will not turn around. He will not do anything to harm you because he just simply does not realize with his dumb ass that you are right there. It just makes it so much easier. But it's, sorry, disclaimer, far from every time that it works. But when it does, it does. Next up, we have the Sheriff's Badge, which you're in for a doozy with this one, so let's go. It increases fire rate and movement speed, and causes 3 bullets to be fired at once in a cone. Effectively a combination of the machine gun, shotgun, and coffee. Although fire rate and movement speed bonuses are slightly lower than the coffee / the machine gun upgrade. With max boot / gun upgrades, this item only does a minor buff. And it lasts about 24 seconds, so that's a good amount of time. Honestly, this one low-key needs no further explanation. It is obviously the best one. Save it, save it, save it. I cannot say it enough. Especially for stages such as Stage 2, Area 3. That's where the enemies will just spawn like crazy and you might need a helping hand. And a helping hand, it truly is. Then we have the Tombstone. The player becomes a zombie for a brief moment of time, granting increased movement speed and the ability to kill on contact. Kind of like a Pac-Man situation, if you will. Enemies will then also flee from the player, and it lasts about 8 seconds. I will also note, though, that this power-up does not grant protection from bullets fired by bosses, such as the Cowboy or Vector. I personally think it's alright, but honestly not the best one. Like, sure you could grab it, but don't almost die trying to go get it. I don't really find it worth it to keep it for safekeeping either, though. Just wouldn't recommend. It's okay, but honestly I find it to be a bit confusing at times sometimes. So it's a Tombstone, not my favorite, but it's aight. Then we got the Wagon Wheel. This causes the player to fire in 8 directions at once, and it lasts about 12 seconds. This is a great item in combination with others, which could be items such as, of course, Sheriff's Badge, because that just makes everything better, but also Shotgun, as it will make like a circle around you so that you're honestly almost invincible. Like, people can just come at you and they're gone. And also in Heavy Machine Gun. But this, I will mention once again that Heavy Machine Gun does tend to be a bit bulky and can be hard to control, so don't get too crazy with it. And those are the power-ups. Now, before getting way too deep into the enemies, I do quickly want to mention the friendlies, which is only one. It's a gooper. I don't even really know how to say that, but it's this rodent type deal. It distracts enemies, draws them towards it, and just kills them on impact. It does not harm the player, and it cannot be killed by the player. It disappears after it has fully crossed the screen. Goopers may carry the player on a parade float upon victory against the boss. Low-key, high-key, useless. So, my thing with it is that you should definitely not wait for it to save your ass, because 9 times out of 10, it won't even really hit a lot of enemies in my experience, like 5 maximum. And I know that that's probably not everybody's experience, or maybe I'm just not really looking at it when it comes and blesses me across the screen. But definitely don't think that this is like a power-up at all. Just when it's there, just be like, oh, it's you. But focus on your own thing, because honestly, sometimes it's even a distraction to me. I'm like, oh, what's going on down there? And then it's just that goofy, But whatever. Let's get into the enemies.
Hey, we got the accent challenge. Shot with me today. From us 10. Alright, number 1. We got Beanie.
First, we got orcs. They walk slowly towards the player, and they often spawn in large numbers. Now, these are the easiest ones to deal with. Their HP is not that high, and you can figure them out pretty easy. I don't necessarily have any tips on those per se, because you just gotta deal with them. They don't have a particular pattern that I think is difficult, so just go with it. I know you can do it. Get those orcs, okay? Next up is Spike Ball. This enters the area and walks to a random location and deploys into an armored spike ball. It kills the player on contact, whether it's deployed or undeployed. If time has run out and the only remaining enemies are spike balls, their HP is reduced to 1. Damage done to the spike ball while it's moving is still effective after it deploys. They can be quite dangerous, to be honest. Try to kill them before they get to you. But honestly, on certain levels, they can come to your benefit. Specifically, I'm speaking about Stage 1, Area 4. At some points, they can trap some of the other enemies, making your life a little bit easier. As you can tell on the screen right now, they're actually trapped. They're trapping themselves, which is great because then I don't have to deal with that spawn hole. So thank you. Shout out to you, Spike Ball. Now, next up is the Ogre. Not the orc, but the Ogre. Yeah. This enemy moves slowly and apparently destroys spike balls on contact. Although I don't think I've ever experienced it, I guess it happens. They are kind of tanks, but honestly, I don't think I've actually ever been killed by them, because they're quite slow. So I wouldn't honestly worry too much about them. Like, even if you feel like, oh no, it just came out, focus on the mushrooms in the levels where they are present. And I just said it. Who's up next? The mushrooms. The mushrooms moves quickly. They run as fast as the player if it's without speed upgrades, which is a hard thing to manage. Mushrooms are probably one of the enemies who have killed me the most, to be honest, just due to their, immense amount of speed, which maybe is not an immense amount, but they definitely feel fast. And a lot of times, they will spawn and they will just come at you so fast, so definitely be aware of their speed and their whereabouts, because they're very, sporadic. Those are definitely danger points when it comes to not dying, because they're fast, like I just said a bajillion times. The evil butterfly is up next. Love these names. It's not a butterfly, it's an evil butterfly. Yes. This is the first flying enemy. It can spawn pretty much anywhere on the perimeter and it flies towards the player. It can also fly over obstacles. To me, this one is not that much of a threat. They can be quite unpredictable though, but they do not have much health, so use that to your advantage and get them out of the way fast. It doesn't have to be that crazy. They are not that fast themselves, but get them out of the way, okay? Yeah. Is that advice, or is that just me telling you to kill them? I don't know. Next up, we have the mummy. The mummy moves slowly, and they spawn in large hordes. Use the fact that they are a horde enemy to your advantage, I'd say. You can walk around them a lot more, also because they are really not that fast, especially if you have a fast upgrade. But I'll get to the upgrades after the enemies, okay? Okay, just be patient. Imp is a flying enemy that can spawn anywhere in the perimeter, seeking the player. It can fly over obstacles, and it is not distracted by the gooper or deterred by the tombstone power-up. Needless to say, they are a bit of a hard enemy. I'd recommend to have a wagon wheel on deck when dealing with these enemies, and to keep your eye out for them in general. I've definitely had some dumb deaths, for sure. So for bosses, there aren't a lot, but it's also not a long game, I get it, whatever. First off, we got Cowboy. Both fights with the cowboy take place in open fields with very little cover. The player and cowboy are separated by a ravine/river, which can only be crossed with a lucky smoke bomb, like I said earlier. The cowboy will run out of cover and shoot a volley of bullets upwards, sometimes matching the player's movement before retreating back to cover. He often pauses behind cover and sometimes outside of cover. Upon dying, the boss drops an extra life, a bridge appears crossing the river, and a raft pickup appears which sends the player to the next stage. When it comes to dealing with the cowboy, I'll say that the most important thing you have to have if you don't get that lucky smoke bomb is patience. You have to have patience. I cannot tell you the amount of times I've just been impatient and just been like, I'm just gonna go ahead and like shoot him or whatever. No, you have to wait till he is the one who's vulnerable, run out, shoot him a bit, follow his movements, and then like you have to like play bait with yourself a little bit, go out, let him come out, let him shoot back and forth a little bit, and then you take action when he's not behind cover but still like recovering, almost like he's like having a little bit of a breathing break. That's why you gotta do it. That's definitely my advice for when you don't get that lucky with your smoke bombs. Now there is Vector. Vector is the final boss, and he is definitely significantly more difficult than the cowboy. Movement is not restricted on the stage for the player or for Vector. Vector can fire directly at the player or in 8 directions, as with the wheel power-up. As his health decreases, he starts summoning enemies. The player is victorious after defeating Vector. Now, Vector is also one of the reasons why I have failed a bunch of times. You got to learn his movements. He will do those 2 things, but what you gotta pray for, you gotta hope for, is that he does the one where he just summons enemies. Because you can kill those enemies just fine, but watch out for the thing he shoots out. It is sometimes unpredictable, but it's not unpredictable, it just feels that way. Don't panic. That's my best advice. You can easily panic when you see those coming towards you. I really do get that. But you have to stay cool and save your power-ups. Once again, I cannot stress that enough. Honestly, to make this happen, you low-key, high-key, I know it's annoying, but you kinda gotta have a sheriff's badge. At least in my experience. It is really difficult to do without it because he also gets a bit stunted by the fact that he's getting hit so much. I feel like that is the one power-up that has made me just sure of my victory. But that's that on Vector. Vector, what the? Stay cool, save your power-ups, do the dang thing. One of the more vital things in Prairie King is of course the upgrades, being the boots, the gun, and the ammo. The upgrades are so important. Now you might think, yeah, no shit, Sherlock. No shit. But I cannot stress that enough. It can really make or break your game in certain levels. I would recommend going for the gun and the ammo upgrade above everything else, aka the boots. Even though it can help you on your feet, that brute strength is so key, since it just makes things so much easier for you. When everything around you can just melt and you don't even really have to deal with them if you have the ammo and the gun upgrade. You're just gonna be a damn machine, for sure. In regard to that, I would also say that you should not give up, because sometimes you just can't afford that upgrade that you wanted. And honestly, when that has happened for me a lot of times, start over. And that's also a tip that I would give just for the game in general. Don't be afraid to start over. When you don't see it going anywhere, it just doesn't feel like the flow is good, you don't get a lot of money, just start over. It's not shameful, it's not bad, it's just a part of the life. The Prairie King life, clearly. Now I will also stress in that same sentence that coins are just super duper important. And health is obviously not. You simply have to ignore health when you're attempting this, to be honest, as you won't need them. you're not planning to die, are you, right? Just like my guy Brooke would say, no one ever plans that they're going to die in a plan. That is definitely paraphrasing, but it's just a distraction from what you really want to do. So although you have probably seen me in some clips grabbing lives anyway, it's just a matter of instinct, but I will try to drop that instinct if you're really, really hardcore attempting to do this with no deaths, because it's not necessary. Like, yeah, it can look cool that you have 12 lives, but it's unnecessary. Just accept it. It's unnecessary, okay? Now for my last and final advice, I will be going over the stages specifically. Not in depth like that, it'll be quick, I promise, it's not that bad. So, let's go. Stage 1, the Prairie, Area 1. Pretty straightforward. You just gotta do what you gotta do. You have to survive, you have to do the basics and just get this area done. Move on. Stage 1, Area 2, you now have a few obstacles, but honestly, I don't ever really feel like they're in my way. I forgot to mention that in both these levels, I prefer to be in the middle. I can walk around, especially more in Area 1, I walk around a little bit, but it doesn't really deter me at all with the obstacles. That same thing goes with Area 3. I don't see it as that difficult of an area to manage. However, for Area 4, Stage 1, I definitely have some tips. I prefer going to the top left corner and just staying up there. I don't like being in that cube and just hitting them from side to side. It feels claustrophobic, and I have just found myself dying on top of dying on top of dying. So although you might feel like it's a little bit intimidating just staying out of that cube, you are actually kind of safer in my humble opinion, because a lot of these dumbass enemies will also go into the cube and they will not bother you. They'll just kind of like dilly-dally in there. These are also the levels where the spike balls definitely tend to help you if you don't hit them and they're like down there and stuff like that. Yeah. So that's Area 4. Stage 1 on the Prairie with the boss is the cowboy. Patience. Use the smoke bomb if possible. If you're lucky, you'll get down to him and you can hide behind him. Do it. You can do it. Patience is a virtue, okay? Nice. Stage 2 in the forest. Now you have to look out for new enemies, but the Area 1 doesn't really obstruct you from doing way too much, so just deal with that as you may. Stay in the middle, walk around, you're gonna be okay. For Area 2 in the forest, Stage 2, you maybe have to move around a little bit more, but those obstacles obstruct you a little bit more, so be aware that it can be difficult and you can't really use them that much, like in regard to hiding, because the butterflies will get ya if you're like close to one of the tree stumps or something like that. They just kind of come out of left field and ruin the whole vibe, to be honest, so yeah. For Stage 2, Area 3, it's the one where I've died so many times, but I guess it makes sense because it's also very much a halfway point. Stay in the middle, but do not be afraid to venture out to get your coins and get your level ups or power ups. Definitely do it, get the power ups, and don't be afraid to use them either, because it will help you so much. Like if you have a sheriff's badge and a wagon wheel, you're good. You're melting all of them. Definitely. And when you're there, you can walk around a bit more freely than you could before, but definitely toughen up for that one because it's a doozy sometimes. Then there's the boss in the forge, and it's pretty much the same deal. Patience, maybe use the smoke bomb if lucky. Yes, do what you got to do. Now it's the nitty-gritty of the graveyard in Stage 3. Area 1, you have stuff that obstructs you, but it's okay, it's not that bad. You can walk a little bit around, seeing as the mummies are not that bad, and even with the imps, you're gonna be okay. It's definitely doable, and hopefully you have some good upgrades on your hand that will make this a lot easier. Area 2 in Stage 3 is pretty much the same deal in my opinion. It's really not that bad. More imps will appear, but it is pretty much the same deal. Don't be afraid to walk around in this one either. It's gonna be okay. You're gonna be safe eventually. Now, Area 3 right before Vector is very difficult considering the amount of imps that will come and flock. They definitely do flock, so I use that word very intentionally. Be careful, like breathe, chill out, keep keep power-ups. It is so important. Like I said, the wagon wheel, one of my favorites for this one. Of course, Sheriff's Badge, but then you have to like spray just everywhere. But that's okay, it's better than nothing. Absolutely go for it, I'd say. And then there's Vector. You have to relax, you have to chill, know his movements, don't be afraid to try again. Do what you have to do. And besides, it's just a game, right? But with that being said, I think that that's probably all the wisdom that I can think of as of right now anyway, that I had to share with you guys. So I don't think I have anything else to say, but thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.